Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's good to see everyone this morning. Well, thank you all for joining us again this morning um, in YouTube land or social media
Amen.
as we get ready to partake again this morning on this week's Torah portion. Bless y'all for you all being a part with us. And excuse me, I got my I got it on wrong. Messed it up. But we'll just take it out. We'll just take it out.
Okay.
We'll just take it out. We'll just take it out. Put it over here. Amen. So praise the Most High for you all joining us this morning. I hit my prayer Shabbat Shalom on wrong, so I just decided to take it off until later. So anyway, this morning's Torah class we're going to be talking. It's called He Continued Living. The Hebrew word is Vayashiv. So we're gonna let's get started in a word of prayer. We're gonna try to get into an in-depth, very in-depth study this morning for our Torah class. So let's just pray. Yah, we thank you this morning for being good to us. Thank you for this Shabbat day, for it's a day that you've commanded for us to rest. And we thank you for that opportunity to rest and reflect upon your words and to learn your word and to worship you in spirit and in truth. Father, we pray this morning that you would teach us your word this morning, that you would lead and guide us into all truth, that you would give myself and my wife the ability to be able to teach your word with clear understanding, that we can comprehend what we read. We depend upon you, for you are the teacher, and you know where your intentions are when you had your word written.
Yes.
So we pray this morning for you to convict us of sin, for you to lead and guide us to all truth. Rebuke the spirit of confusion. And help us to be able to understand any questions that we have. Help us to be able to explain it to where it is truth and that the individuals can understand what's being conveyed. So we just praise you. We thank you. Thank you for your goodness and your love and kindness. Thank you for this day. It's a beautiful, wonderful day that you've made, and we're going to rejoice and be glad in this day. So we praise you, we just glorify you, and we lift you up in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah. So, amen.
Amen.
So, our Torah portion, as I said this morning, is called He Continued Living. And we've been dealing with our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and now, today, we'll start dealing with Joseph. Yosef. We'll get into very in depth on his brothers, their attitudes, why they treated him like they treated him, because his brothers were some not so good men. So we'll be able to address a lot of issues. So just a little small review. We're gonna do a little small review about we made our forefather Abraham, who Yah calls up from his father's house to go to a place that he would show him. And of course we see Abraham's faith, how Yah raised him up, made him a father of many nations, kept his promise by giving him a son named Isaac. And as he gave him his son Isaac, we see that his faith was tested when Yah had wanted him to give his own son for a sacrifice. And the scriptures say that Abraham had concluded in his mind that Yah can raise the dead. And so we saw that, and then we saw Isaac being born. We saw Isaac marry Rebekah, and we saw the story of Jacob and Esau. And so Jacob and Esau, we saw what transpired between Jacob and his brother Esau, and the birthright and the blessings from his father, and how he left from his father's house to go get a wife, and also to escape from his brother Esau from killing him. Then he goes to his uncle Laban's house. When he goes to Laban's house, we see that Laban was a liar from the beginning, a trickster from the beginning. Jacob stays with him 12 years. And in that period of 12 years, he had 11 sons with his uncle Laban. And as he came back, he had Benjamin born. But we see that in the 12 years how he had those 11 sons, and those 11, and then an extra son, Benjamin, that he had when Rachel died. And so he had 12 sons. So now we have the 12 tribes of Israel. So now we're going to begin to talk about those sons today. So our Torah portion is going to begin with Genesis 37 and 1 through 40 and 23. So we're going to read a little bit. We're just going to get on into it, you all. If you have any questions, we'll try to respond to your questions. Amen. I'm going to turn your phone up so we can see the questions come through. So, let me just begin to read. Genesis 37 and 1 reads, Yaakov continued living, Yaakov continued living in the land where his father had lived as a foreigner, the land of Canaan. Here is the history of Yaakov. When Joseph was 17 years old, he used to pasture the flock with his brothers, even though he was still a boy. Once, when he was with the sons of Bilhah, his father's wives, he brought a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph the most of all of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long sleeve robe. Some of your Bibles may say a coat of many colors. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they began to hate him and reached a point where they couldn't even talk with him in a civil manner. Yosef had a dream, which he told his brothers, and that made them hate him all the more. He said to them, "Listen while I tell you about this dream of mine. We were tying up bundles of wheat in the field, when suddenly my bundle got up by itself and stood upright. And your bundles came, gathered around mine, and prostrated themselves before it." His brothers retorted, "Yes, you will certainly be our king. You will do a great job of bossing us around." And they hated him still the more for his dreams and what he said. He had another dream which he told his brothers. "Here, I had another dream, and there were the sun, the moon, and 11 stars prostrating themselves before me." He told his father too, as well as his brothers. But his father rebuked him. "What is this dream you have had? Do you really expect me, your mother, and your brothers to come and prostrate ourselves before you on the ground?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. After this, when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's sheep at Shechem, Israel asked Joseph, "Aren't your brothers pasturing the sheep in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." He answered, "Here I am." He said to him, "Go now, see whether things are going well with your brothers and with the sheep, and bring word back to me." So he sent him away from the Hebron valley, and he went to Shechem, where a man found him wandering in the countryside. The man asked him, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers." He answered, "Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the sheep?" And the man said, "They've left here because I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" And Yosef went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. They spotted him in the distance, and before he had arrived where they were, they had already plotted to kill him. They said to each other, "Look, this dreamer is here, is coming. So now let's kill him, throw him into one of these cisterns here. Then we'll say some wild animal devour him. We'll see then what becomes of his dreams." But when Reuben heard this, he saved him from being destroyed by them. He said, "We shouldn't take his life. Don't shed blood." Reuben added, "Throw him into the cistern here in the wilds, but don't lay hands on him yourselves." He intended to rescue him from them later and restore him to his father. So it was that when Joseph arrived to be with his brothers, they stripped off his robe, the long sleeve robe he was wearing, and took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty and without any water in it, or the pit. Then they sat down to eat their meals. But as they looked up, they saw in front of them a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from the Gilead, their camels loaded with aromatic gum healing resin, and opium, on their way down to Egypt. And Yehuda said to his brothers, Judah, what advantage is it to us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites instead of putting him to death with our own hands. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh. His brothers paid attention to him. So when the Midian merchants passed by, they drew and lifted Yosef out of the cistern and sold him for half a pound of silver shekels to the Ishmaelim who took Yosef on to Egypt. Reuben returned to the cistern, and upon seeing that Yosef wasn't in it, tore his clothes in mourning. He returned to his brothers and said, the boy isn't there. Where can I go now? They took Yosef's robe, killed a male goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. Then they sent the long sleeve robe and brought it to their father, saying, we found this. Do you know if it's your son's robe or not? He recognized it and cried, it's my son's robe. Some wild animal has torn Yosef into pieces and eaten him. Yaakov tore his clothes and put it on sackcloth around his waist, mourned his son for many days. Though all of his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, he refused all consolation, saying, no, I will go down to the grave, to my son mourning, and his father wept for him. In Egypt, the Midianim, or the Midianites, sold Yosef to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, a captain of the guard. Amen. So now we see Joseph, we see that Yaakov continued living in the land where his father had lived as a foreigner in the land of Canaan. And so when Joseph was 17 years old, he used to pastor the flock with his brothers, even though he was still a boy, which is a good thing. But listen, Joseph, from the beginning, he infuriates his brothers. It was the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah who he told on. So he told on his brothers. By this time, Rachel and Leah both were dead. So Zilpah and Bilhah were the wives of Yaakov this time. And the Hebrew word is Isha, which means they were legal wives of Yaakov. And we can see that Yaakov really favored Joseph. He really cared about him. So he gave Joseph a ketonet pasim, a royal tunic or a coat of many colors. And by him doing this, what he did was he anointed Joseph as a prince. Joseph had already had problems. He had already had problems with his brothers because he told on them. You know, like in today's term, you know, they have a saying, even when I grew up, snitches get stitches. So they told on Joseph for the mere fact, or they hated Joseph because at one point, from one perspective, he was a tattletale. He was telling their business. You know, so like he was spying on them. Then Jacob showed more favor to Joseph. And the sons knew that. They saw that. He put it on public display. And he gave him a coat of many colors, you know, or a royal tunic, long sleeve. And he anointed him as the prince of all those sons. Now listen to this. Reuben was the oldest son. And then you had other sons that were older. And Joseph was younger than all of his brothers except for Benjamin. So they hated that. They couldn't handle that. And it bothered them so much that they couldn't even really have a conversation with their own little brother without being sarcastic. The word says they couldn't even, he got to the point they began to hate him, and it reached to the point that they couldn't even talk with him in a silver manner. So they really couldn't even stand him. So that's amazing. So now Joseph is with his brothers. When you read Jasher, it shows that Joseph kind of lifted himself above his brothers. So he knew his father favored him. He knew he knew how his father felt, and so he kind of put himself in a position. When you look in Jasher, it shows him kind of being a little arrogant or a little conceited, which is not a good thing to your brothers. So now, when you see Joseph, he said he has a dream. He has a dream, and says in the dream, so he had 11 sheaves of grain and they all bowed down to the 12th. Now, hindsight is 20/20, so we can see that his dream came to pass and what his dream represented, because the dream represented the famine in Egypt. It represented that Joseph was the one in charge of the grain, and his brothers came to get grain from him, and that's when he even revealed himself to them. You know, when they was in the famine and they needed food, and their father sent them. So we can see that his dream came to pass. But the brothers had so much contention against their brother, they didn't like him and really hated him. They couldn't talk to him. That when he came to tell them the dream, they fully understood that he was telling them that y'all got to submit to me. You know. So now their father already gave him a royal tunic. He already showed favor toward him above them, and they understood that. And then you come telling me in this dream that that we got to submit to you. You know, we're gonna submit to you, and so now, because the personality and the ambitions of the dreamer also played a role. So it's part of how Joseph had come to them and what he was saying to them, how he carried himself around him, and telling them this dream. You know, now dreams in that time. Listen, dreams in that time, people believed in dreams. They believed in having these dreams and that the Most High was speaking. If you was Hebrew or even in other cultures, they believed they're God, so they was getting messages, you know, through dreams. And that's how Yah spoke to Joseph. He spoke to Joseph in a dream. And the dream that he had was a hybrid thing. It was a combination of an oracle from Yah and the aspiration of the dreamer. So it was a combination of how Joseph saw himself above his brothers, how he carried himself, and also the Most High really was speaking to Joseph. And as we can see in the scriptures, that Yah communicated to Joseph in dreams. Yes, ma'am.
And right here, while we're speaking of the dream, I thought it was extremely interesting of how Yah begins to communicate with them, because we know Yishak also dreamed. He dreamed about angels ascending and descending up on a ladder, but yet in that dream, so did Adonai, Yah himself, speak to him. And at this point, I'm thinking about the patriarchs. We are talking about Abraham, Yishak, and Yaakov, and why Joseph at in this chapter is going to extremely be about Joseph and his brothers. And thinking about patriarchs, I thought a distinction between how Yah spoke to them is he communicated with them in a two-way manner. He actually spoke, whereas he spoke to Joseph specifically in a dream. He has not yet, where I've read, had an encounter with Yah coming to him, literally speaking, but he's conveying himself through dreams and visions. And later we'll see that it is actually a gift of Yah that he will be able to use for favor in the time to come. But I thought that was extremely interesting, that the communication of the patriarchs, even though Joseph is the center point of starting in chapter 37, talking about his life and his brothers, where they will later become a nation, how the communication changed there. So that dream is extremely, extremely important.
Amen. So now we get down to verse 9, and he has another dream. And this time he says, you know, he relates his dream to his whole family, including his father. And the dream was of the sun and the moon and the stars. You know, he was demonstrating, telling his father that even his own father and mothers were bowed down to him. Now again, the mothers were Zilpah and Bilhah, because remember Rachel was dead and Leah was already dead. So, but he was telling him that his father, you gonna bow down to me, my mama's gonna bow down to me, and my brother's gonna bow down to me. His father rebuked him, because he was like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, how you gonna sit here and tell me I'm gonna bow down to you? You know, and the father and his brothers got jealous of him because his father kept the matter in hand. When we see in the Song of Solomon, it shows us that jealousy is as cruel as the grave. It's cold. You know, it can cause your mind to go to places that it should not go. And we kind of look at the character of the sons of Yaakov. They were not angels. You know, they were not humble, meek men. They were actually you had two of his sons that were actually killers. Simeon and Levi. You know, then you had Reuben, who had already rebelled against Yaakov by sleeping on his couch with his concubine. You know, by having sex. You know, actually with one of his wives. So their sons were not, you know, necessarily angels or necessarily, you know, just real good boys. So when Joseph was saying what he was saying, you could imagine how their minds, how their hearts, you know, were already, they were already hostile toward him. They already couldn't speak to him. And the only thing that probably was keeping him safe at that point was him remaining with his fathers. You know, and they didn't like him coming around them because he had already told on Bilhah and Zilpah's sons, he brought Yaakov back a bad report. So you can kind of see the animosity. Then he tells his brothers again in front of his father and mother that all of y'all gonna bow to me. And at this time, Joseph was a young boy, maybe about 17 years old. So he was young. So you know, and young, you kind of see some immaturity. How young people speak. They say things out of being immature, you know, not paying attention to what's really going on, not taking into consideration everybody that's around them and what's happening. So he was saying some stuff that maybe he should have been saying at that moment, but he said anyway. You know, and so Jacob rebuked him, you know, for saying that. You have anything you want to say before I go forward?
And they were rebuked because culturally, or the cultural context of that time, and we know the background and where Abraham initially came from, the Mesopotamian area, and in those times, people believed in gods, and they had symbols, and it's culturally said that they believed that the sun was I believe the mother, the moon was the father, and the stars were the children.
The son was the father.
Oh, the sun, excuse me, the sun was the father, the moon was the mother, and the stars was the children. So just in telling that dream to his father, what a strong rebuke came forth, simply because that is what would be implied of one that is having a dream, and you're saying all these signs did A, B, C, and D, and bow down before me. So his father's reply was as such. So I think that that's interesting, that we have to dig a little deeper than what is actually being said and look at the cultural context of that and why they would be so infuriated, why they would be so angry, and the brothers would even hate him the more. Because even in today's time, African queens and kings, other countries, when you have royalty, it's not that to say that I'm wearing a Michael Kors that you would not be able to tell, or carrying a Michael Kors you would not be able to tell, and that's just one of my options I chose. You could go Louis Vuitton and other name brands, but you would be able to tell the value of it because of the name. Certain things that are more authentic, you'd be able to see, okay, that's nice. But in royalty, there were certain things that they wore, you know, that told people without opening your mouth who they were. And so indeed, again, not only did he have this coat or this tunic from head to foot that was absolutely beautiful, but it spoke into his future or where he was going. And his brothers had a problem with that. So I think that that's extremely important, that we look at the intentions, that we look at Yah's divine providence unfolding in Joseph's life. And really, there's nothing he can do about it but stand. As I encouraged us this morning, we have to stand. He couldn't help that he was chosen, you know. But in being chosen, there are things that he's going through and about to get ready to face. Amen?
Amen. So the flock, you know, they were shepherds. So the brothers had went to go pasture their father's sheep in Shechem. Now Shechem was where Dinah was raped, and where his brothers killed the males of that city. And they were outside of Shechem, but they were based in Hebron. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And it was about 50 miles between, you know, Hebron and Shechem. And but when Joseph found them, they was in Dothan, and Dothan means two wells. So they was at two wells. And so they so now as he's coming, they have a plot. You know what I'm saying? And the plot was to get rid of Joseph. He gotta go. He gotta go. So the brothers saw him coming. They intended to kill him. They wanted to take him out of here. You got to go. Now you got to be cold blooded. to want to kill your brothers. You know, me coming up as a kid, I experienced some guys I know that a guy that I know that killed his own brother. You know, in real life, not just a Cain and Abel story, but I knew both of the brothers, and one of the brothers, man, he was a little shorter than, he was the older brother that was actually killed. His younger brother stabbed him with a knife, you know, and because the older brother kept picking on him, and he stabbed him. And that, when I was a kid, knowing these things and hearing this, and knowing these guys personally, it did something to me. Cause I got 3 brothers, and I'm the oldest of 4, and so my mind was always to the point of, I'm gonna love my brothers. You know, I'm not gonna. No, I can't want to harm my brothers. So when I heard about that, I tried to have an understanding of my brothers, as far as who they were, their personalities, and try to make up in my own mind there would be nothing that would to bring me to the point of wanting to bring harm to them, especially to kill them. And I've taught my kids that, you know, as growing up, that we're family. You love your family. You love your brothers. And I try to do my best to not show favoritism between my children. I try to understand all their personalities and know that all of them have a purpose in life, and each one has a different purpose. So Yaakov showed a lot of favor to Joseph. Then he gives Joseph this royal tunic in front of his brothers, and it probably dealt with Joseph's mind, walking around, you know, like he's a prince with a royal tunic on, saying, "Hey, you know, y'all gonna bow down to me." Well, you know, had in the field, I had this dream. We tied up our sheaves. Y'all was bowed down before me. You know, then, you know, I had another dream, man, the sun, moon, and the stars, you know, bowed down to me. And he probably walk around showing his little tunic, the long sleeve, you know, looking good. So they couldn't stand him. So now when his dad sends him, when his dad sends him to them, they are 50 miles, because it's 50 miles from Shechem to Hebron. Now, as Joseph is going, he gets lost. He's wondering. When you read the book of Jasher, it says that it was an angel of the Most High that found him wandering and sent him on his way. So we can kind of see Yah's hand in play, sending Yosef into his destiny. You know, so as they were coming, the brothers saw him coming, and they intended to kill him. Then Reuben intervenes. So your question is, why did Reuben want to intervene? You know, and so because Reuben knew that whatever happened to Joseph, he was going to be blamed for it. So let me just step in and say, now, you know, and then he probably was already on thin ice. You know, you rebelled against your father already by sleeping with his wife. You know, some things had transpired. So you might want to make sure everything's copacetic. And so he said, hey, now, wait a minute. You know, let's not kill him. Let's throw him into this pit or this empty well over here. Because empty wells in their day was commonly used as prisons when they were dry. You know, they'll put them, you know, down in there, or they'll become a hiding place. And the brothers' hearts were so hardened against Joseph, and they hated him so that when they threw him into this pit or this well or this cistern, they ate their food. They ate their food and listened to him while he was begging for them to let him out. So let's read that. It says we're gonna start at verse 23 of 37. It says so it was that when Joseph arrived to be with his brothers, they stripped off his robe, the long sleeve robe he was wearing. They poured off their royalty. No, man, you can't have this. They take you finna die. You know, we got to have you or throw you to this pit. So they poured that robe off of him, you know, that he was wearing, took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty without any water in it. Then they sat down to eat their meal. But as they were looked up, they saw in front of them the caravan of the Israelite. So they sat down, eat their meal. When you read Jasher, it says that Joseph was pleading, please, I'm sorry, what have I done to y'all? Let me out. Let me go. And then think about it now. In this world, there's no telling what was in it. Jasher records maybe some vipers were in it, some poison things was in it that can bring harm to Joseph and even kill him down there. But it says that Yah held those things back off of him and didn't allow him to become bitten or hurt. But he's in this cistern, pleading with his brothers, and they sit down eating comfortably, ain't paying attention to him. You know why he's begging for them? And they were sitting along an ancient trail route, so they see some Ishmaelites, coming, and so they sold Joseph probably for 20 shekels because that was the standard price of a male slave, So then they killed a goat and they smeared the blood of a goat on a royal tunic to pretend it was Joseph's blood, and they wanted to give it to their father. And here comes the great deception, because they go to their father and he couldn't even be comforted. He said he'll die and go down to Sheol, go down to the grave, or the place of the dead, like he's feeling, that's heavy, So now when it says this, we're gonna let Pastor Karen say something. I'm gonna come back and explain what the Israelites and the Midianites names changed.
Okay, I just thought it was interesting, and it's just my speculation in reference to going to Shechem, 50 miles away from Hebron. If you remember earlier, back a few chapters, Shechem is the same place where Dinah was taken advantage of. And then Simeon and Levi went back and slaughtered all the males there.
Right.
But this is where the brothers run off to. This is where Joseph's father sent him to find the boys, and in passing, a man or an angel in different extra biblical sources report different things. However, I just think that the hesitation or the reluctancy even of Joseph after he lost his way and then ending up where, in Shechem, heading to Shechem, come on, what vengeance may be there? In cultural context, I mean, even today, there is still tribal war. There's still vengeance to be taken if they can. You got me, I'm going to get you. And this type of mindset, according to scripture, is real. Because Yah admonishes us to take no vengeance upon yourselves. For vengeance is Yah's, he shall repay. So I'm thinking just along those lines, if you have any comments, I thought it was interesting that that's where it's going. But I don't think, I think the way he responded, his haphazardness as he approached Shechem on the way there was befitting for what initially happened. His response, let me say it that way, because that's a place where they could have really took Joseph. They could have really took vengeance. They could have done away with all of them, even after what they had done. And that's just my speculation. So I just thought that was interesting to bring out.
Right. I'm thinking that he sent them to Shechem because, remember, they didn't go outside. They never lived inside of the city. They lived outside of the walls. But he also purchased land there. So he probably sent them to his land that he had purchased, to feed. Well, they go 50 miles from there. Now the Bible says that they saw some Ishmaelites coming, but then when and that's in verse 25 it says, then they sat down to eat their meals, but they as they looked up, they saw in front of them the caravan of Ishmaelites coming from the Gilead. But then when you go down to verse 28, it says, so when the Midianites merchants passed by, they drew and lifted Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for a half pound of silver shekels to the Ishmaelites. So it said they saw the Midianites pass by, they sold to the Ishmaelites. So I think that was considered maybe the same people. You got to understand that Ishmael was from Hagar, and Midianites was from Keturah. And both of these were, Abraham had a wife by Hagar, and he also had children by Keturah. So I'm thinking that these probably was some of the same people. They probably mingled in together. But it's just showing two different names, Ishmaelites and Midianites. But both of these groups of people were still seed of Abraham. So now, we see Joseph, thrown into the pit. He's in there until his brothers sell him into slavery. So now we're going to go to chapter 38, and we're going to get on the matter of Judah and Tamar. So we're going to read, and we're going to get in on this thing. So 38:1 says this: It was at this time when Yehuda went out from his brothers and settled near a man named Ahav, who was an Adulamite. Then Yehuda saw one of the daughters of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and slept with her. She conceived and had a son, whom he named She conceived and had a son, and she conceived again and had a son, and she called him Onan. Then she conceived yet again and had a son, whom she called Shelah. He was in Kaziv when she gave birth to him. Yehuda took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Yehuda's firstborn, was evil from Yah's perspective. Adonai killed him. Yehuda said to Onan, "Go sleep with your brother's wife, perform the duties of a husband's brother to her, and preserve your brother's line of descent." However, Onan knew that the child would not count as his, so whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground, so as to not give his brother offspring. What he did was evil from Yah's perspective, and so he killed him too. Then Yehuda said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Stay a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, I don't want him to die too, like his brothers." So Tamar went and lived at home with her father. In due time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Yehuda, died. After Yehuda had been comforted, he went up to be with his sheep shearers in Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law has gone up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she took off her widow's clothes, completely covered her face with her veil, and sat at the entrance to Enayim, which is on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah had grown up, but she still was not being given to him as his wife. And when Yehuda saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, because she had covered her face. So he went over to her to where she was sitting and said, not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, "Come, let me sleep with you." And she answered, "What will you pay to sleep with me?" And he said, "I will send you a kid from the flock of goats." And she said, "Will you also give me something as a guarantee until you send it?" He answered, "What should I give you as a..." And she said, "Your seal, which is cord, and the staff you're carrying in your hand." So he gave them to her, and then went in and slept with her, and she conceived by him. She got up and went away, took off her veil, and put on her widow's clothes. Yehuda sent the kid with his friend the Adulamite to receive the guaranteed items back from the woman, but he couldn't find her. He asked the people near where she had been, "Where is the prostitute who was on the road to Enayim?" But they answered, "There hasn't been a prostitute around here. We ain't seen a prostitute around here, man." So he returned to Yehuda and said, "I couldn't find her. Also, the people said there hasn't been any prostitute there or here." And Yehuda said, "All right, well, let her keep the things so that she won't be publicly shamed, so that we won't be publicly shamed. I sent the kid, but you didn't find her." About 3 months later, Yehuda was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been acting like a whore. Moreover, she is pregnant as a result of her prostitution." And Yehuda said, "Bring her out and let her be burned alive." But when she was brought out, she sent this message to her father-in-law: "I am pregnant by the man to whom these things belong. Determine, I beg you, whose these are." the signet, the cord, and the staff. Then Yehuda acknowledged owning them. He said, "She is more righteous than I, because I didn't let her become the wife of my son Shelah." And he never slept with her again. And when she went into labor, it became evident that she was going to have twins. And she was in labor. One of them put out his hand, and the midwife took his hand and tied a scarlet thread on it. This one came out first. But when he then he withdrew his hand, and his brother came out. So she said, "How did you manage to break out first?" Therefore he was named Peretz, which means breaking out. Then out came his brother, with the scarlet thread on his hand, and he was given the name Zerach, which means scarlet. So now, Judah and Tamar. So Judah, from Judah's line, would come the Mashiach, Yeshua. And Judah would be the one that would inherit the authority for the tribe of Israel. He would have the authority. He was the fourth born. It was Judah. Now listen to this. It was Judah. He was the one that wanted Joseph to be sold. Because Joseph was a rival to Judah. That was in Judah's mind. So he wanted Joseph to be sold. Because remember, Reuben, he fulfilled his status by sleeping with Bilhah. So now Judah and Joseph are rivals, and Simeon and Levi fulfilled their status by killing the males of Shechem. So that's the first three sons of Yaakov: Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. And Judah comes fourth. So Judah probably considered himself to be first, to get everything. So he considered him and Joseph as rivals. Judah is the one that wanted Joseph to be sold into slavery. So Judah and Joseph both will become rulers of two Israelite kingdoms. Ephraim, the Egyptian son of Joseph, he replaced Joseph for a time. But when you look at it, you look at the northern kingdom, you had 10 tribes. And even though in some scripture we call them the 10 tribes of Israel or the lost tribes of Israel, they were actually called Ephraim, because the dominant tribe is all the names. They took over all the names. So Ephraim consisted of the other 9 tribes, just like the tribe of Judah consisted of 2 tribes. Now listen. You had Judah, you had Benjamin, and then you had some of the tribe of Levi. And then you had the northern kingdom with the 9 tribes. The 10 tribes, but Levi was not considered a tribe. Remember, Levi was adopted by Yah. They became the priests. They didn't have an inheritance as far as land per se, because El Shaddai, Yah, was their inheritance. So they were actually given 48 cities. But Ephraim and Manasseh became one tribe, and they took the place of Joseph. So you have the Ephraim. So Ezekiel 37 says that Ephraim and Judah would come back together in the end times. So Ephraim was the lost tribe.
Amen.
And so Judah and Joseph, they would become the 2 rulers of 2 Israelite kingdoms. And everything is a pattern and a type, because Judah left from his brothers. And even after slow-mo Solomon's sin and things he did, it was split. And Judah was over here, and his other brothers was over here, So certain things are patterns and type. So Judah and Joseph would become long-term rivals, So now, after Joseph was sold into Judah left his brothers. But he left his brothers after Joseph was sold into Egypt, but before Jacob moved the clan to Egypt. So Judah marries a Canaanite woman. He part ways with his brother, he married a Canaanite woman, and he has 3 sons. Now listen, none of these sons were suitable to carry on the line of promise. And then Judah did what Esau had done. Judah went and married a Canaanite woman. He married a Canaanite woman. The first son, it said that he was evil from Yah's perspective. Yah killed him. Now, when you read Jasher, it shows you that and Onan did the same thing, but they had two different intentions. When he would have a relationship with his wife, he would not put his seed in her. So he was wicked. Yah killed him. Now, Onan did the same thing. And he did that, and we'll get into it a little later in a minute, but he did that because he put his seed on the ground. You know, Yah killed, what he did was wicked from Yah's perspective. So he killed him. So I'm going to get into that in just a second. So let me finish about Judah. Judah, he did what Esau had done, and he separated his faith from everyday life matters. So now, as I was saying, back to the sons. So Yah kills before his son is produced. Marries Tamar. Then he had the second son, Onan, to marry Tamar to fulfill the duty to his brother, which is called a Levirate or a levitate marriage, or the Hebrew word, the Yibum. Let's go to Deuteronomy 25:5. Leviate marriage. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy 25:5. You can.
25 and 5.
Yeah.
If brothers live together and one of them dies childless, his widow is not to marry someone unrelated to him. Her husband's brother is to go to her and perform the duty of a brother-in-law by marrying her. The first child she bears will succeed to the name of his dead brother, so that his name will not be eliminated from Israel.
Okay, so now, that's what Onan was supposed to do. But he refused to impregnate Tamar. So Yah killed him too. Because the son, his reason was because the son that would be produced would not have been his, but it would have belonged to his brother. That means that son would have been entitled to part of Judah's estate. And then also, you can see Yah killing him because Tamar would have had no son to care for her in her old age. So Onan was not fulfilling, his duty as a brother for his other brother. So that the third son, Shalach, should have married Tamar, but Judah refused. He probably got scared. He promised her. He showed he lied and sent her to her dad's house. So now, as time progresses, Judah's wife died. He mourns. After he mourns, then he goes to Timnah for sheep shearing. Now, he did her wrong. He greatly wronged Tamar. So Tamar decided that she would sleep with Judah because she needed a son. So she disguised herself as a prostitute, and 3 months later, Judah finds out that Tamar is pregnant and orders her to be burned or to be killed for the crime of fornication. And then, when he discovers that he's the father, he asks for forgiveness, saying she's more righteous than I, because he understood that he had to have a son produced. So she really wasn't being a prostitute; she was making him fulfill his word. Now listen to this: the rabbis say that Well, first of all, Tamar she produced twin sons, Perez and Zerah. Perez was divided away to continue the line of promise. Judah, listen to this, married a Canaanite woman. The rabbis tell us that Tamar was not Canaanite, that she was a Semite, she was Semitic. It said Judah intended to have a son of promise from a Canaanite woman, his wife, but it wound up the promised line stayed Semite. So Perez is divided away to continue the line of promise. None of those sons who was Canaanite boys, because they came from the mother who was a Canaanite woman, was able to get with Tamar, but Judah did. And the line stayed with Tamar. And the rabbi says that Tamar was not a Canaanite, which is kind of deep. She had 2 sons. And so Perez was divided and elected and separated for Yah, and the line of promise continued through him. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, because the levirate marriage was not necessarily just unique to Israel. It was just if a man was not willing to take his brother's wife to carry on that legacy, there was a process after that. If he was not willing, he was supposed to be brought before the townspeople, and he admit that he was not willing, and they're supposed to take off their sandal, and then they're supposed to spit in his face. And this is to show that you
spit at him.
Yeah, spit in his face. Where we just got through reading in the book of Deuteronomy 25. If you go on, it'll tell you specifically what's supposed to happen, because they absolutely rejected the order, the process of carrying on that dead brother's name, which in everything, if it was a male firstborn, we see and we know how important it is culturally now, and even how important it is to Yah. Within started in the Bereshit, how firstborn is important, what all comes along with that. And I thought it was interesting because levirate marriage initially has a Latin root word, but the Hebrew word for it is yibum, or yibum, Yibbum. And I just thought that was extremely interesting how she ends up getting that child anyway, because Judah's intentions from the beginning were never fulfilled. His word fell to the ground. And Yah is really dealing with our intentions here. Everything we say, and I thought it was even more so interesting that once he figured out, so we're gonna throw her out, have her stoned, have her killed. And she hands over the staff and all the belongings, and he says, "Oh, for she is greater than I." And he instantly remembers the lie he told to her. Not Onan, not but the lie he told. And I think that speaks volumes about things that we deal with in our inward part, in our mind, vows that we've made to Yah, knowingly made vows to Yah, and it's not until something comes up abruptly in our life, stops us in our track, then do we remember. It's better to just not make that vow than to make that vow and break it. And my point is saying this: remember our intentions, the things we say before people, the things that we've said to Yah to set aside. Oh Father, who can go, who can I send? Use me, Yah, I will go. And at that time, we don't make ourselves available. We don't keep our word. We don't put ourselves all in. And then it's not till we begin to buckle and break do we remember the words we initiated. So I think this is extremely important, that he all of a sudden remembers the lie or the word he didn't fulfill to Tamar. So let's be mindful of our vows and what we say. Malachi.
Judah didn't even have to lie, because I remember one of the past Torah portions we've done is if the next of kin didn't want to marry her, he could be publicly humiliated and he wouldn't have to do it. So even though that probably would have been, it would have been better if he did that versus a lie, because God could have still done what he wanted to do anyway when it came to Tamar. But Judah doing what he did humiliated himself when he didn't even have to happen like that.
Right.
Absolutely, it did not. And also, while we're talking about humiliation, and we spoke on Dinah and how they view women. And come on, these are supposed to be people of Yah. Their brothers was just getting a free ride. And especially Onan, his intentions was just from the beginning, enjoy the act, enjoy the works, but I'm not gonna fulfill my part. And so Yah got rid of them. And I think that's to be noted, to be pointed out. We just cannot be along for the ride. We have to fulfill our end. We are in covenant. We have things that we should make sure that we follow through on, especially if you've raised your hand or open your mouth or have submitted to the will of Yah. People say all the time, and I think about it, thinking along the lines of not keeping your word, or God, y'all sent me here, or God sent me here. Oh, I've been praying for this, I've been praying for that, a ministry here, or this and that, and then when it comes, all of a sudden we don't see you the next week, or you don't pick up the phone, and I just wonder. I say, y'all, are we really ready for the call? Are we really ready to keep our vows and come in covenant with your people? Can we stand to are we able to fulfill the words that we speak forth and when we come in a vow with y'all? And I think that it's just interesting how Judah, as Malachi brought out, he did not have to do that. He did not have to go through that humiliation if he had just kept his word, because he had options. He had 3 sons, that he had options. He did not have to be caught up by the lie he entangled himself, and it caught up with him. Amen.
Amen. So now we're going to go to 39, Joseph in Egypt. It says, Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. Adonai was with Joseph, and he became wealthy while he was in the household of his master, the Egyptian. His master saw that Adonai was with him, that Adonai prospered everything he did. Yosef pleased him as he served him, manager of his household. He entrusted all his possessions to Joseph. From the time he appointed him manager of his household and all his possessions, Adonai blessed the Egyptian's household for Joseph's sake. Adonai's blessing was on all he owned, whether in the house or in the field. So he left all his possessions in Joseph's care, and because he had him, he paid no attention to his affairs except for the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome as well. And in time, the day when his master's wife took a look at Joseph and said, "Sleep with me." But he refused, saying to his master's wife, "Look, because my master has me, he doesn't know what's going on in his house. He has put all his possessions in my charge, and this that I am his equal, he hasn't withheld anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" But she kept pressing him day after day. Nevertheless, he did listen to her. He refused to sleep with her, or even be with her. However, one day when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men living in the house was indoors, she grabbed him by his robe and said, "Sleep with me." But he fled, leaving the robe in her hand, and got himself outside. When she saw that he had left his robe in her hand and had escaped, she called the men of her house and said to them, "Look at this. My husband brought a Hebrew to make fools of us. He came in and wanted to sleep with me, but I yelled out loudly. And when he heard me yelling like that, he left his robe with me and ran out." She put the robe aside until his master came home. Then she said to him, "This Hebrew slave you brought us came in to make a fool of me. But when I yelled out, he left his robe with me and fled outside. When his master heard what his wife said, and she told him, 'Here's what your slave did to me,' he became furious. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, in the place where the king's prisoners were kept. And there he was in the prison. But Adonai was with Joseph, showing him grace, and continued giving him favor in the sight of the prison warden. Showing him grace or loving kindness, that word is hesed. But he continued to give him favor in the sight of the prison warden. The prison warden made Joseph supervisor of all the prisoners in the prison, so that whatever they did there, he was in charge of it. And the prison warden paid no attention to anything Joseph did, because Adonai was with him, and whatever he did, Adonai prospered. So now we got Joseph. Joseph is in Egypt. Goes down to Egypt. Potiphar buys him, purchases him. He's a slave. Potiphar purchased Joseph. We see a few things coming to pass. Here we see the word being fulfilled the promise being fulfilled to Abraham by the descendants going to Egypt as slaves. Joseph was the first slave in Egypt. And now the thing is, his whole family came there and they prospered. It was a couple hundred years later that Pharaoh turned on them and made all them slaves. But we see Yah's word coming to pass that he told Abraham. So Potiphar's wife is attractive to Joseph. Now Joseph became prosperous even as a household servant. When Yah was guiding the entire situation, you know, now listen to this. When you read Asher, it says that the Pharaoh was having some kind of festival or some kind of thing at the river, and Potiphar and all the household went. It says that Potiphar's wife fell sick, like she wasn't feeling well, and then so when they left, she goes to the temple. Her God, she put on some royal stuff, trying to look good. She sees Joseph coming out of the field to go to the house to work, and when he sees her, he turns, you know, to try to walk away. And she calls him, you know, and so tell him to come on in. So when he goes in there, it says that she grabbed him and told him that you gonna today you gonna sleep with me today, or you gonna die. And she reached and pulled a sword out. So Joseph been afraid, you know, he takes off. She grabs the coat. So now it says that she was afraid that she'd be killed or she'd be exposed. So she makes a lie. She makes up a lie, and it says that Joseph tries to rape her. Potiphar comes in and casts Joseph into prison. My question there is, why wouldn't he kill him? You know, punish him. You know, I understand Yah's hand was on him, of course, but he just throws him into prison for a crime against his wife. When you have to look at Joseph's status in Potiphar's house, even though he was Potiphar's servant. Potiphar was the captain of the guard. Joseph was over everything in Potiphar's house. He was his equal. Joseph was Potiphar's equal in his house, and the only thing that Joseph didn't have the rights to was Potiphar's wife. Now Joseph was a Hebrew. He was over everything in Potiphar's house. So look at his status, and Potiphar just throws him into prison because she lied and said he tried to rape her. So then he was thrown into prison just to become the jail supervisor. Now he wasn't in prison with a regular prison. He was actually in the captain of the guard's house. The captain of the guard was the prisoner, the man over the prison was actually on the same level as Potiphar, along with, and we're going to read in a second, along with the baker and the butler. They were actually, they actually held high positions. So they were not held in a regular prison, and Yosef was not thrown into a regular prison, but he was actually in the captain of the guard's house. So now, we're going to read 40. We're going to ask some questions too. We're going to make some comments. 40 says this: sometime later it came about that the Egyptian king's cupbearer and bakers grew offense to their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh became angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, in the same place where Joseph was kept. The captain of the guard charged Joseph to be with him, and he became their attendant while they remained in prison. So one night, the two of them, the king of Egypt's cupbearer and his baker there in the prison, both had dreams, each dream with its own meaning. Joseph came in to them in the morning and saw that they looked sad. He asked Pharaoh's officers there with him in the prison. He asked Pharaoh's officers there with him in the prison of his master's house, "Why are you looking so sad today?" And they said to him, "We each had a dream, and there is no one around who can interpret it." So Joseph said to them, "Well, don't interpretation belong to God? Tell it to me, please." Then the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. "In my dream, there in front of me was a vine, and the vine had 3 branches. The branches budded, but it suddenly began to blossom, and finally clusters of ripe grapes appeared. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and gave the cup to Pharaoh. And Yosef said to him, Here is it. Here is interpretation. The three breakers are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. And you will be giving Pharaoh his cup as you used to when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it goes well with you, and show me kindness, please, and please mention me to Pharaoh, so that he will release me from this prison. For the truth is that I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and here too I have done nothing wrong that would justify putting me in this dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Yosef, I too saw in my dream, there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the uppermost basket there were all kinds of baked goods, and for Pharaoh, but the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. And Yosef answered, Here is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift your head from off of you. He will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from off of you. On the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday. He gave a party for all his officials, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among the officials. He restored the chief cupbearer back to his position, so that he again gave Pharaoh his cup. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph interpreted to him. Nevertheless, the chief cupbearer did remember Joseph, but forgot him. Listen to this before I even go there. When the scripture says that Pharaoh hanged the chief baker, he didn't actually hang him by the neck. What he did was impaled him to a tree. So he cut his head off, but he put him on, impaled him, his body on a tree. When Yeshua was impaled, probably as scripture says, cursed is anyone who hangs from a tree. Yeshua was impaled. You have some people try to say that black people were cursed. The sins of the slaves were cursed people because they were hung by the trees, for wanting their freedom and all that. That's not that's a lie, and that's not the hanging that was done in biblical days. But sometimes the adversary can use people to tell lies to make you think that you're something that you're not, because the power to define is the power to determine destiny. So when someone tries to tell you that you're somebody else and you allow it to happen to you, then you become who they say that you are. But in actuality, the so-called African American is not a cursed person. It's from the perspective of your skin being black and things happen. Of course, we're in this land because of our disobedience to the Most High, so we're in exile. But He has given everyone the opportunity to turn back to Him and to follow Yeshua as the Mashiach, and He also is restoring Israel's identity back to them. So back to us. So it's amazing. But for someone to say you're cursed, He hung him, He impaled him on a tree. So now, Joseph he's about 28 years old now. Now here's the question: did Joseph believe that those old dreams were still valid? Because he was going through something. Did he believe that the sun and the moon and the stars were going to bow down to him? Where was his faith? Where was his mind in the situation? Did he still believe the word of the Most High? When you read Jasher again, it says when the cupbearer and the baker came to the prison, when you look at it, it was kind of sloppy. It said the cupbearer it was flies and stuff all in the wine. The baker's food stuff wasn't right, had stuff in it. Pharaoh was angry, and threw him in prison. The baker was murdered, or he was killed by Pharaoh. He was killed by Pharaoh. So now we got the dreams back into the picture. The men were troubled because the seer was not available to them. So the cupbearer goes first. He gets good news. In 3 days, he could be restored back to his position. But the bad news for the bakers, in 3 days he was gonna die. Now, it said that he had the baskets on his head. Egyptian men carried their baskets on their head, and the women carried the baskets on their hips or their shoulders. And this is opposite from the Oriental cultures. But now listen, Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him. The cupbearer forgot about Joseph. Now something that stands out to me as I was studying this and trying to look at other history and extra stuff on it. It shows that Jasher especially says that Yah had punished Joseph for trying to depend on the cupbearer to get him out instead of letting him do it. And so he stayed for a couple more years. I don't know how accurate it is, but that's what was said. Of course, we see that Yah got him out. It took 2 years, when he got him out.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna, you have anything you want to say?
The interpretation of that dream, after the first dream Joseph interpreted, it says he told him
Yeah, good news. Be
oh,
wise.
oh. It is said according in scripture, your old men shall have dreams, and your young men shall see visions. I want to encourage us today, and this is just a little takeaway for me. Nothing that I'm saying that it is saying in the scriptures, but just encouragement that whatever dreams that you're having, make sure that we consult Yah. Consider everything that comes up before us. Consider the dreams that we're having. And I would pray that if there is an interpreter of dreams, because this is a pattern of Yah. Even though this is in Torah, I believe the patterns of Yah still exist because sin still exists. Yeshua HaMashiach has not returned. The new heaven and the new earth is not yet come. He has not come back. So I absolutely believe that the patterns of Yah still exist from the beginning of the Bereshit to Revelations. So I do believe that dreams can be interpreted, point in saying. But pray about all things. Just because you have a vision and a dream and you don't have one to interpret it, don't just run off with it wildly and foolishly without consulting Yah. Because we do. We all have visions and dreams, and we learned today in our study that partly is because of us and partly Yah may be speaking. So consider all your dreams. Don't just run and take off flying away with it. And I know we have heard the scripture, though the vision tarry, write it down, make it plain. Whatever it is that you believe that Yah has shown you, I'm praying that Yah will give divine interpretation and that He will give us lead us and guide us into all truth. Because I say to you today, and we read it, we didn't make it up. Because the chief baker, because the baker saw that the first dream was favorable, he asked for his interpretation. And when he got his was not good. Mm-hmm. And neither was the butler. So their lives ended in tragedy.
The butler lived.
I mean, the cupbearer.
The cupbearer lived.
The cupbearer.
Died.
The baker.
Got his head cut off. Got his head on the tree.
Okay. Theirs were not good. So my point in saying this is that don't let people talk you into anything. Don't let our emotions and our imaginations run away with us. If Yah has an interpreter such as Joseph in that time, I believe that for us in this time as believers in the community of Yah, as servants of Yah, having the Ruach HaKodesh, that He will lead us and connect us with people that are walking in the light and walking in truth, that will tell us the truth. And that's what Joseph did. He interpreted the truth. And a lot of times when Yah is speaking to us and we've had visions and dreams, a lot of times it's not what we want to hear. But I would pray that our faith would not fail us and that we would stand in trust and in faith on Yah's word. So, with all that being said, whose report will you believe? We believe the report of Yah. We believe that He's still moving, that the Ruach Kadesh is real. Torah is of need when we live by His teachings, His rulings, and His misvoice. Amen. I just wanted to encourage us today. Whatever that vision and dream is, make sure that we get a true interpretation. And if it's a rebuke or correction, receive it. And if it's being exalted, amen.
Amen. So we're going to read Amos 2, 6 through 3, 8. It says Amos 2 and 6 through 3 and 8. It says, here's what Adonai says. For Israel's 3 crimes, no, 4, I will not reverse it, because they sell the upright for silver and the poor for a pair of shoes, grinding the heads of the poor in the dust and pushing the lowly out of the way. Father and son sleep with the same girl, profaning my holy name, lying down beside my altar on clothes taken in pledge, drinking wine in the house of their God, brought with fines they impose. I destroyed the immortal before them. Though tall as cedar and strong as oaks, I destroyed their fruit above and their root below. More than that, I brought you up from Egypt, led you 40 years in the desert, so that you could have the immortal land. I raised up some of your sons to be prophets, and other young men of yours to be Nazarene. People of Israel, isn't that true? Asked Adonai. But you give the Nazarene wine to drink, in order the prophets don't prophesy. Enough! I will make all this crush you, just as a cart overloaded with grain crushes what's under it. Even the swift won't be able to flee. The strong won't be able to use their strength. The warriors won't save themselves. Archers won't be able to stand, and the fastest runners won't save themselves. Those on horses won't save themselves. And on that day, even the bravest warriors will throw off their weapons and flee, says Adonai. Listen to the word which Adonai has spoken against you, people of Israel, against the entire family that I brought you, against the entire family that I brought you from the land of Egypt. Of all the families of the earth, only you have I intimately known. This is why I will punish you for all of your crimes. Do 2 people travel together without having so agreed? Does a lion roar in the forest when it has no prey? Does a young lion growl in its lair if it has caught nothing? Does a bird get caught in a trap on the ground if it hasn't been baited? Does a trap spring up from the ground when it has taken nothing? And when the shofar is blown in the city, don't the people tremble? Can disaster befall a city? Without Adonai having done it? Adonai, God, does nothing without revealing His plans to His servants, the prophets. The lions has roared. Who would not fear? Adonai, God, has spoken. Who would not prophesy? So we see Amos. He's talking to the children of Israel, and this is kind of heavy, kind of a rebuke. What it says this. It says it's the same pattern. You know, instead of the sons doing what they did, we're gonna see some of the character of the whole nation, and you can see some of the character of the whole nation of Israel through the sons of Yaakov. It says because they sell the upright for silver, and the poor for a pair of shoes, grinding the head of the poor to dust, and pushing the lowly out of the way. That's just like something that was done to Joseph. They sold him into slavery, for silver. Or the father and the son sleep with the same girl. Profane his whole name, something that Reuben did. That's exactly something that Reuben did. And then they're telling the prophets to shut up, don't prophesy. Giving the Nazarene wine when they're not supposed to have wine. We know one person that we can say that was a Nazarite in the scriptures was Samson. He was not supposed to have wine and was not supposed to cut his hair. But we kind of see the pattern that when Yah speaks to the children of Israel, even through his prophets, or he gives them the word, it's kind of like we just go the opposite way. Do the exact opposite of what is commanded. We need to take a regard on how we treat people, how we treat our brothers. The greatest command is to Shema Israel, to listen to Israel, what they teach us to obey. That we are to love Adonai, love Yahweh all of our heart, all our strength, all our might. And Yeshua says, and we are to love our neighbor as our own individual selves. And he gives the parable of who is my neighbor, who is our neighbor. Your neighbor is your enemies. Even from the Samaritans, because he gave the parable of the Levite, the preacher, and the Samaritan. And the Samaritans at that time were considered enemies of Israel. But the Samaritan helped the man that was on the ground, and based on Yeshua's audience, he had to be a Jew. So we have a responsibility to love Yah, to love his people, to walk in obedience, to acknowledge the things that he's done for us, how he has brought us out, how he's been there for us. He tells Israel in chapter 3, verse 2, he says, of all the families of the earth, of all the families of the earth, on the earth, only you have I intimately known. This is why I will punish you. I'm going to get you because we have a relationship. And you still do these things. So we need to take heed, to Yah's word, to be mindful of him, especially at his word, and also be mindful of one another and walk in obedience, because our disobedience can result in punishment. It can result to us going into exile. It can result to us losing out on things that we should not have to or don't have to lose out on if we just simply walk in our obedience to the Most High's word. So we need to take heed, body of Messiah, whether you are native born Israel or whether you're grafted in because of your faith in the covenant promises of Abraham and your faith in the Mashiach, say Yeshua. But we need to really pay attention and grow in that. Amen. You have anything you want to say?
I just thought it was interesting going back to just two things. It says, I raised up some of your, this is Amos 2:11. I raised up some of your sons to be prophets, other young men of yours to be Nazarene. And then we go on down, but you gave them Nazarene drink, and you ordered your prophets to not prophesy or don't prophesy. We're seeing relationship. I mean, you tell your own son to shut up because you want your way. You choose the things of the world. You would tell the Nazarene or the other young men that became Nazarenes, here, you get drunk. I'm going to give you strong drink so that you can break covenant of what you're not supposed to do, because that was one of the guidelines that was given to Samson's parents. And I thought it's even more interesting in chapter 3 that he says, out of all the families on the earth, only you I have intimately known. Yah put himself in them. He came to them. He spoke to them face to face, even on down to Moses, starting with Abraham. He made himself known. Yada. They were in an intimate relationship, and it's all about family. And as I'm seeing here, is Yah is talking to his family as the Father, as the Great One, the King of the universe, and we they continued, we continued, they continued, we continued to reject his ways. And he rebukes them corrects them, and yet extends his arm, extends and gives us his only begotten Son, Yeshua, to redeem us. He's steady calling for us, and yet they rejected him. And I thought that was just interesting. And if you look at some households today, we see where let there be a household where one wants to go wayward between siblings. You will see that sibling will wreak havoc, will try to pull the other ones that's walking the straight and narrow, that's being obedient to their parents within the household, and they will do all they can to steer them the wrong way, to take them out of the promised land, to lead them away from the promised land. And I just see we got to get it together, body of Messiah, because they, that same mindset exists. We continue to go against the Torah, the teachings, the will, the righteousness, the way of Yah, and we have to stop. We have to take heed.
Amen. So we're going to read Acts 7, verses 9 through 16. We're going to specifically focus on 9 and 10, though. But let me read Acts 7, verses 9 through 16. It says, now the patriots grew jealous of Joseph. The patriots grew jealous of Joseph and sold him into slavery in Egypt. But Adonai was with him. He rescued him from all his troubles and gave him favor and wisdom before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who appointed him chief administrator over Egypt and over all his household. Now there came a famine that caused much suffering throughout Egypt and Canaan. But when Yaakov heard that there was grain in Egypt, he sent his fathers there the first time. The second time Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers. He sent our father there the first time. The second time Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, and Joseph's family became known to Pharaoh. Joseph then sent for his father Yaakov and all his relatives, 75 people, and Yaakov went down to Egypt. There he died, as did our ancestors. Their bodies were removed to Shechem and buried in the tomb Abraham had brought from the family of Hamor and Shechem for a certain sum of money. So we see Stephen in Acts, when this is the account when Stephen is getting ready to be stoned, actually. And so he begins to teach the word and tell them about Yaakov and Joseph. And Joseph's brothers grew jealous of Joseph and sold him into slavery in Egypt. But Yah was with him, and he rescued him from all his troubles and gave him favor and wisdom before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who appointed him chief administrator over Egypt and all his household. And one thing that you can see about Joseph, when you're looking at this, he remained faithful. You know, he did not sin against the Most High. You know, and he still believed in the Father. Point being, when Potiphar's wife tried to sleep with him, he said, I can't sin against God, you know, or your husband. I can't do this to your husband or sin against God. You know, one thing about us that I've seen, because I used to be like this, especially when I was young in my faith, is that when I would go through trials and tests and I'm feeling distraught, the first thing I want to do is, you know, I don't care. You know, God ain't with me. You know, we say, I feel confused. I don't know if I can hear God. So we start sinning, doing things that we know we should not do. You know, because we still know better. We still know the difference between right and wrong. Joseph was 17 years old when he was sold into slavery out of Egypt. But listen to this. I'm sure his father taught him about El Shaddai. Even Isaac was still alive when Joseph was sold into slavery. So I'm sure that the word, that the commands and teachings from Yah was handed down to Joseph and his brothers. So Joseph knew about the Father. He knew about Yah. So when he went to Egypt, he still had his teachings of his father. So the same thing when it comes to us. You know, even though we're going through trials, or we feel as if we're in Egypt, or we're in the pit, or we're, you know, in prison or whatever, regardless of what you're going through, you still have to hold on to your trust and don't sin against God because of your circumstances.
Amen.
You know, because Potiphar's wife wanted to sleep with Joseph. Joseph could have said, man, I don't care, I ain't from here. My brothers sold me into slavery. I might as well sleep with him. He could have,
He could.
but he chose to obey the Father, and he still understood what he was. We got to have that same mindset. He believed in the Most High, and even when the baker and the butler, were locked up, and they had these dreams, and Joseph said, "Well, God can interpret every dream." So we still see that Joseph still believed in the Father. He still had his trust. That's why I asked the question earlier: did Joseph still believe in that dream that he was given? Even when it comes to us, do you still believe in the word? Do you still believe in the vision, the dream that Yah gave you? Because even though Yah gave you a dream and a vision, that don't exempt you from going through trials. You're still going to go through trials. You're still going to have tests in your life. Things are still going to show up in your life. So you got to still say, okay, I need to hold on. You got to hold on. You can't sin against God because you're going through. I was speaking to someone, I'm not going to reveal their name, but they told me that they want to go and do wrong against their spouse because of their spouse's mistreatment. So they want to go and sleep with somebody else. And I said, well, don't do that.
Right.
No. Don't sin against God because you don't like what's happening. And don't start speaking out of your mouth about God not hearing you or God not being there. That's foolish. And that's the adversary that tries to appeal to our evil inclination to make us want to give up, to make us want to stop. But we can't stop. You can't give up. You can't get weary. You can't walk away. You got to be able to. You got to hang in there, and you have to trust that word. Maybe we haven't had anybody to come prophesy and say God said. Okay, and but you still have the written scriptures, the written word that promises us, that we'll be blessed by the Most High through our obedience.
Yes.
We still have the written word that Yah promises our forefathers. Abraham, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with your descendants. I'm going to curse those that curse you. I'm going to bless those that bless you. We hang on to those words. We hang on to that. Just like Yeshua. When the adversary comes to him in Matthew 4 and said, well, if you are the Son of God, then turn these stones into bread. And Yeshua responds, well, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Elohim. So then the adversary tries to come back again and try to quote him scriptures. But Yeshua was still hanging on to the first word that the Most High had already given him. He'd already told him, hey, well, I ain't got to prove who I am. I don't live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Then he said, then he tells the adversary when he comes to get with the word, he said, well, you shouldn't even tip the Lord your God. Then Yeshua already had an understanding of who he was, him being the Mashiach, him dying on the behalf of mankind. He understood his position. So when it came for the adversary to tempt him, he held on to that word. And then even in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he was going through, he tells his Talmudim, listen, it's rough right here. I'm struggling right now to the point I want to die. But then he prays to the Father. And one key thing that he said to the Father was, yet not my will. Let your will be done. So listen, when you're going through, you gotta deny your own self-interest. You cannot let your will override the will of God. You cannot just go against God's word because of how you feel. But you gotta hang on to the promise, to the word that Yah had given you. And so that's important because the devil want to kill you. The devil wants to take you out of here. The adversary, Hasatan, because the adversary is more than one enemy. Lucifer is not the only fallen angel. That he is not the only one that is rebelled against the Most High. You have many demons who try to speak, to you to make you disobey the Father. And you can't give in to those demons. Even when it comes to the demon of fornication, you want to go fornicate. You want to commit adultery. You want to watch pornography. You want to go do something wrong because you mad at what's happening or you mad at the spouse. That's foolish. You want to commit adultery. Or you want to go get high. You want to smoke you a blunt. You want to smoke you a crack rock. Take you some meth. Whatever your so-called past pleasures were. Because the adversary want to cause us to sin. You know, he won't take from you, and you gotta know that because the adversary deceives a lot of people. I've noticed, I've known people who, because they was having struggles financially, instead of them humbling themselves, instead of them waiting on the Father, they went and robbed stores, robbed banks. Some even on accident killed the clerk, got life without a penitentiary, got death sentence. You know, because they just, hey, well, God don't care, so they made a decision that ruined their life. Some people, well, God don't care, so they turned to the alcohol bottle to get drunk. They got drunk, decided to drive home and wreck, ended their lives, hurt someone else. So you can't always resort to want to go and live in sin because you're going through something. But you got to learn how to hang on in there and trust the Father. Joseph's brothers was jealous of him, but the Bible says in Acts 7:10 says, but he rescued him from all of his troubles and gave him favor and wisdom before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who appointed him chief administrator over Egypt and over all the household. So and we've been talking, and we're going to discuss it today again in our worship service. So what Joseph had to have in order for y'all to rescue him. He had to have faith.
Trust.
He had to have trust. You want to go in favor with the Most High? You gotta trust in Him. So, with that being said, I'm done. Did you have anything you want to say before we pray?
And it says, their sheep, he continued living. We must continue to live. When we follow after Yah, stand in trust and faith, which we're going to learn about a little bit more in worship service, we can continue to live because we live through the help and aid of the Ruach HaKodesh. That is how Joseph did it. He continued to live. Amen?
Amen. So, we're going to come back live for you all in probably about 15 minutes with our worship service. Thank the Most High for you all joining us today. Portion. If you didn't get all of it, rewind it from the beginning and follow through, follow the scriptures, so that Yah can bless you. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your goodness and your love and kindness. Thank you, Yah, for loving on us, for teaching us your word. I pray and ask you to continue to help us. Help us to take heed to your word. Put your word in our mind and help us not to read your word with a religious mindset or with what someone else has already told us, but help us to read your word by clearly looking at the word and the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, leading and guiding us. Yah, we want to have a personal relationship with you. We want to know who you are. We want to please you. We want you to favor us and smile upon us. We thank you for being so good to us. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to learn your word, to know you. Yah, even thank you for giving us opportunity to teach your word. We know how serious it is, and we understand the responsibility. So we just ask you to continue to help us, to continue to show your grace toward us, toward your people. Yah, we need you. We just bless your name. We glorify you, for you are awesome. You are wonderful and amazing. And Father, we just thank you for being so good to us. So we praise you and we glorify you. We ask you to be with us as we continue into our worship service. In Yeshua's name. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Shalom.
Shalom.